Well, here we are. We're looking through the lens of Dr. Luke's careful examination of Jesus' life, collecting all the eyewitness facts and figures and official statements and accounts and putting them together so his personal friend Theo can have a confident account of who Jesus is and place his confidence in Jesus, knowing that's a reliable thing. Now, in Luke chapter 5, which we actually looked at last week, Jesus makes two incredible statements. The first one, he says, "Be clean." He's talking about all your shame being washed away from you. And the second one, he says, "Your sins are forgiven." He's talking about all the things we've said or done to other people, the punishment being taken away from us for them. It's amazing. Jesus is basically saying he himself can both solve the problem of the victim and the problem of the perpetrator. He can cleanse the victim of shame and he can forgive the perpetrator of punishment. Amazing statements. Now, lots of people were really thrilled and excited and eagerly came to experience what Jesus had to offer. But some grumbled and complained. In essence, what they were saying was, what right does Jesus have to say and do these things? What right does he have to say, I can clean you of shame and I can forgive you of sin? Who is he? Now, at the beginning of Luke chapter 6, and we're journeying through Luke chapter 6 all this week, Jesus answers that intentionally. And the way he does it is by breaking two Sabbath day rules. Now, we need to pause and remind ourselves, or maybe find out for the first time for you, what the Sabbath was. Now, when God created the whole world, right the way back in Genesis, he did it over 6 days. And on the seventh day, he looked at everything he had made and he said, my work is done. It's finished, it's perfect, it's complete. Nothing else is needed, nothing else needs to be added. That was the seventh day. And to remind people of his finished work, of his word's ability to bring something to completion, he said, take 1 day a week and you don't work. I mean, you do have to work to live, but you stop on that day, don't do any work, to remind yourselves that I, God, when I work, my work is perfect, my work is complete. Now, that was a good thing that God instituted. But what had happened by Jesus' time is that good rule from God had become distorted and exaggerated into a cruel regime of regulations with wicked punishments if you broke them. Now, at the beginning of Luke chapter 6, Jesus deliberately waits till a Sabbath day, a day when you are not meant to work, and on consecutive Sabbath days, he breaks two of the biggest rules. First of all, he breaks the rule about not doing farm work. He picks up some grain and grinds it up in his fingers and feeds his disciples with it. And then secondly, he breaks the rule of not doing any medical work unless it was a life-threatening condition by healing a man with a chronic crippled condition. Now, what he's doing is deliberately saying, look, I am the one who is allowed to work on the Sabbath, and I am the one whose word and work is totally complete. He's in essence consciously, publicly and intentionally doing what only God was able and only God was allowed to do. And he does it very publicly. So much so that in sentence 8, he says to the man who has this chronic condition, he says, get up and stand in front of everybody. He doesn't do it in a side room or go to the man's house in private. He makes it a big public event. And in sentence 10, it says Jesus looked around at everyone. He waits till everyone's got eyes on him and this man before he then speaks and does this work. He wants everyone to know that just like God, all the way back at creation, when God spoke, it was finished and perfect. When Jesus speaks, it is finished and perfect. He couldn't be more explicit. In sentence 5, he literally gives himself the title, I am the Lord of the Sabbath. I am the God of the Sabbath. I am the God of the finished word and the finished work. And so even when we hear the words, be clean, and your sins are forgiven, we realize they come from the one and only person who has the right and the authority and the power for that word to be complete and finished and need nothing else added to it. So as we finish, I want to encourage you to do two things. First, to celebrate Jesus. To celebrate he is the Lord of that completed word and that completed work, the Lord of the Sabbath. But secondly, I want to encourage you to emulate Jesus here. He refuses to get tangled up in human rules and regulations which cause cruelty. He'll have nothing to do with that. In fact, it reminds me of the 12-year-old Jesus. All the way back in Luke chapter 2, Jesus has got lost from his family and they go looking for him. And when they find him, Jesus says to them, "Why were you searching for me? Didn't you know I had to be about my Father's business?" Surely we want to be after our Father's heart. We want to be about our Father's business, just like Jesus was, and not caught up in the cruel distortion of that, which sometimes carries the name religion.